I never thought I'd be the guy posting some messed up story on a relationship advice forum, but here I am. My name's Jake, and I've been married to Emily for about 5 years now. We had a pretty good thing going, or so I thought. She was the kind of wife who always looked good, acted like she loved me, and for the most part I believed her. But lately something was off. Small things at first, missed calls, late nights, a weird attitude shift. She'd snap at me over nothing, cancel plans last minute, and when I'd ask what's wrong, she'd brush me off with a fake smile, saying I was just paranoid or she was stressed. It started to feel like I was losing her even though she was right there beside me. I told myself maybe I was just overthinking it, but I couldn't shake this nagging feeling. Then, a few weeks ago, I decided to check her phone. I know, that's usually a terrible idea, but I was desperate for clarity. I figured maybe she was just stressed or having some work issues. But what I found plastered across her messages was way worse than I ever imagined. She was cheating on me. Not just a quick fling or some one-night stand, this was serious. She'd been sneaking around for months with my brother. It was in every text, every photo, every secret message. They'd been lying to me right in front of my face, hiding the affair while I was at home, thinking everything was fine. My brother, my own flesh and blood. The one person I trusted the most besides Emily. I felt like my world just shattered into pieces. I remember staring at the screen, feeling numb, then boiling with rage. How could they do this during my grandmother's funeral of all times? That was the day I buried her, the woman who raised me. And while I was grieving her loss, Emily and my brother were busy fucking behind my back. That's when I realized the secrets they kept, secrets darker than I could have ever guessed. I didn't cry or yell right then. Instead, I just stared at the phone, trying to process what I just uncovered. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling betrayed on every level. I'd always thought Emily was a bit bitchy, but I never thought she'd be capable of something this cruel. And my brother, my own brother, how could he do this? To me, to our family, I kept asking myself over and over. The pain was a mix of shock, disbelief, and deep, burning anger. I wanted to tear everything apart, but I also knew I had to come up with a plan. Deep down, I knew I couldn't let this go lightly. I wanted revenge, but I also wanted to make her feel just a fraction of what I was feeling, like she deserved. But first I had to decide what to do. Do I confront her right away? Do I wait and gather more evidence? Do I tell everyone? I was torn. The worst part was knowing that the person I trusted most in this world had turned out to be a complete liar. And my own brother, my family, had turned into the biggest betrayal I've ever faced. That night, I started drafting my plan. I knew I couldn't just storm in and accuse them without proof. I needed to catch them in the act, or at least have concrete evidence to make her squirm. I also knew I had to handle it carefully because this wasn't just some fling. It was years of deception, and it involved someone I cared about deeply, my brother. The stakes couldn't be higher, so that's where I am now. Sitting here trying to decide my next move, feeling the weight of betrayal crushing me inside. I don't know what's worse, the fact that they cheated or the fact that they did it during my grandmother's funeral, like my grief didn't even matter. I guess I'll figure out what to do next, but right now I just feel broken. After hours of tossing and turning, I finally decided I needed more proof before I did anything drastic. I couldn't just confront her based on a few texts I'd seen, no matter how much they hurt. I started digging around her stuff, going through her emails, her social media accounts, anything that might give me more clarity. I also kept an eye on her schedule, trying to catch her slipping. It was a relentless cycle of suspicion and hope that I'd find something concrete or, honestly, just enough to make her squirm. I couldn't believe I was doing this. I'd always been a straightforward guy, not some stalker. But I felt like I was in a corner and I needed to know the full extent of her lies. What I found next was even worse. One night, I saw her leave the house around 10 p.m., heading to some place I'd never heard of, an apartment complex not far from our neighborhood. Her car was gone for hours. I waited until I was sure she was gone, then followed her on foot. It was dark, and I felt like my heart was pounding right out of my chest. When I arrived, I saw her go into that building and I stayed across the street, watching. Minutes later, I saw my brother's car pull into the parking lot. My stomach sank. My mind was racing. What the hell was going on? Then I saw her come out, hugging someone, and I knew it was him. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the way they looked at each other, it was obvious they were more than just friends. They were fucking. I felt betrayed all over again, but this time I was furious. I snapped some photos of them together, her in a tight dress, him looking just as guilty. I knew I couldn't go back now. I had enough to destroy their little secret affair, and I was going to make sure they paid for it. I waited until dawn, then went home. I was exhausted but wired, like I'd just run a marathon. That morning, I called in sick to work, told my boss I wasn't feeling well, and started planning how I'd handle the confrontation. I was going to tell Emily I knew everything. I wasn't going to give her the chance to spin her lies this time. But I also needed to be smart about it. If I just barged in and accused her without proof, she'd deny everything. I needed her to admit it to see that I had her cornered. My mind was racing, trying to figure out the best way to get her to crack. I also knew I had to prepare for her bitchy attitude. She'd probably try to lie her way out of it, maybe even blame me for snooping. My plan was to wait for her to come home that evening, then confront her with everything I had. I'd show her the photos, the time stamps, everything. I wanted her to see I wasn't bluffing. I also planned to record the conversation just in case she tried to deny or gaslight me. I'd been through enough betrayal. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. While I waited, I couldn't help but feel sick. How did I get here? I thought I knew my wife. I thought I knew my brother. Turns out, I was living with secrets darker than I ever could have imagined. The woman I'd trusted with my heart was screwing my own brother behind my back, and I'd been completely blind to it. The thought made me want to crawl out of my skin. Part of me questioned everything. What else have they lied about? How long has this been going on? And most of all, how do I even begin to fix this mess? I knew I couldn't just sweep it under the rug or pretend it didn't happen. But what I didn't know yet was how far they were willing to go, or how much I was willing to let this destroy me before I took control. That evening finally rolled around, and I was a mess of nerves and anger. I waited until Emily was home, trying to compose myself, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. When she stepped inside, I could see the typical bitchy smirk on her face, like she thought she could get away with anything. She was acting like she didn't have a care in the world, which only fueled my fury. I didn't give her a chance to talk. I threw the phone with the photos onto the table and said, "We need to talk, Emily. I know everything." Her face twisted into a pretentious sneer, trying to brush it off. "What are you talking about, Jake? You're overreacting. You always do this, just accuse me of stuff without proof." I cut her off, showing her the pictures. "This is what I found, you and my brother sneaking around during my grandmother's funeral. How could you do this to me, to us?" Her eyes widened for a moment, and then the bitchy attitude kicked in. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You're crazy. You're always paranoid. Maybe you're just jealous because I look better than some of the girls you've been checking out." That was her go-to lie: deny, deflect, and insult. But I was buying it this time. I pressed her harder, demanding she admit the truth, and she did, sort of. She finally cracked, her voice dripping with disdain. "Fine. Yes, I cheated. I wanted to feel alive, okay? You never pay attention to me anymore. You're always working or playing video games or whatever. My brother was there and it just happened. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I was furious but also hurt. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. How could she just brush it off like it was nothing? And my brother, what kind of scumbag sleeps with his brother's wife while I was mourning my grandma? The whole thing made me sick. I could see she was trying to act cool, like she was completely unfazed, but I knew better. Her eyes kept darting around like she was waiting for me to say something that would make her feel better. I didn't give her that satisfaction. Instead, I told her to pack her bags. I told her I wanted her gone immediately. I needed space, time to breathe and process what had just happened. She threw a fit, bitching and yelling about how I was overreacting, how I was ruining everything, and how I was just jealous or some shit. Typical. She called me insecure, said I was paranoid, and that I was destroying our marriage over some stupid pictures. But it was more than pictures. It was the betrayal of everything I believed in. I knew I had to get her out of my house before I lost control. While she was packing her things, she kept lying, trying to gaslight me, saying she was sorry, but also blaming me for everything. That wasn't going to work. I told her she had no right to come back, no right to pretend she was innocent. This was done. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. After she left, I was alone in the house, feeling hollow and empty. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her sneering face, my brother's betrayal. I kept asking myself how it got so bad, how I didn't see it earlier. And then I remembered all the little things I'd ignored, the late nights, the secretive texts, the way she'd always been bitchy when I tried to get close. That night I sat in the dark, staring at the photos I'd taken, feeling a strange mixture of relief and despair. I knew I was done with Emily, done with the lies, the cheating, the betrayal. But part of me also felt like I'd lost a piece of myself. Trust was shattered, and I didn't know if I could ever fix it. The hardest part was accepting that the woman I loved, the one I'd built my life with, had turned into someone so selfish, so manipulative. And my brother, my own flesh and blood, being part of it all. I'd always thought family was supposed to stick together, but now I saw how dark and twisted some of those bonds could be. I knew I had to move on, but I didn't know how. I just knew I couldn't stay here, not with her lying and sneering like nothing was wrong. I needed time to breathe, to figure out what to do next, and to heal from this massive, earth-shattering betrayal. The days that followed were the hardest I've ever faced. I moved into a friend's place for a while, trying to get some distance from the chaos in my own house. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that bitchy smirk, and my brother's guilty eyes. It was like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. I kept going over everything, trying to find some kind of answer or sense in what had happened. How did I not see it? How did they manage to lie so convincingly? The worst part was the feeling of betrayal, not just from Emily, but from my own brother. We, grown up close, always had each other's backs. And now I realized he'd been sleeping with my wife during the funeral of my grandmother. That day I buried someone who loved me, and they were out screwing around behind my back, pretending to be innocent. I kept wondering if it was just a fling or something more long-term. Either way, it was sickening. I decided I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I needed to know exactly how deep this went. So I started digging again. Phone records, social media messages, anything that could give me a clearer picture. I wanted specifics. I wanted to know how long they'd been lying, how often they saw each other, and what their plans were. I needed to know what I was really dealing with. It didn't take long before I uncovered more. Turns out, Emily and my brother had been hiding this for almost a year. They'd been sneaking around behind my back, lying to everyone, pretending everything was normal. I found explicit conversations, detailed plans to meet, even a hidden apartment they used for secret sex. They kept all of this secret like they were proud of their betrayal. I felt sick reading it. I also discovered that they'd been making excuses. Emily said she was stressed, that I was too busy, and my brother was always working late. But the truth was, they'd been planning this for a long time. I couldn't believe how calculated they'd been. And here I was, grieving my grandmother, thinking I was just dealing with some normal marriage problems. Instead, I was blindsided by a sick, dark secret that tore my entire world apart. I started feeling angry, beyond angry. It was like venom inside me. I couldn't believe she'd lied to my face, called me paranoid, and then secretly betrayed me during my worst moment. My brother, too. How could they look me in the eyes and keep this secret? I felt like I had been played by two of the people I trusted most. It was a betrayal I wasn't sure I could come back from, but I knew I couldn't let them win. I had to plan my next move carefully. I couldn't just blow everything up without knowing exactly what I had. I started making recordings of my conversations with friends, even some private recordings of her when she didn't think I was listening. I figured I might need hard evidence if I decided to confront her again or take further steps. I had to be smart. The thing that pissed me off the most was how she kept lying. Every excuse was more bullshit. She'd say she was just stressed, just bored, just experimenting, and then she'd turn around and be bitchy and dismissive. Her attitude was infuriating because she thought she could lie her way out of everything, that she could keep up the act forever. Well, I wasn't going to let her. I also reached out to my brother, trying to get some honest answers. When I called him, he tried to deny everything at first, but I had the evidence. I threatened him, told him I'd go to the police if I had to, and that I'd destroy his reputation if I found out he ever did this again. That's when he finally admitted to everything, but he was defensive and cold, like he didn't care anymore. I realized that, deep down, I was just a pawn in their sick game. I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. I had to decide whether to try to fix things or walk away for good. Honestly, the thought of staying with Emily after all this, knowing she lied and cheated during my grandmother's funeral, made me sick. But part of me still loved her, or at least wanted to believe there was some way to salvage what little was left. The other part knew I deserved better, and I owed it to myself to get out of this toxic mess. So I started planning my break. I knew I had to do it in a way that would hurt her, make her realize what she lost. I didn't want a messy divorce, but I wanted her to suffer even just a little. I decided I'd tell her everything I knew face to face, show her the evidence, and then walk away. Without looking back, she needed to see what her lies had caused, how she destroyed us all with a fucking secret. I guess the biggest lesson I've learned so far is that sometimes people hide their true colors until it's too late. Nothing is ever as perfect as it seems. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, especially when it's from the ones you love most. Moving forward, I know I'll be more careful, more guarded. But I also know I won't let this destroy me. I'll rebuild, even if it takes a long time. I just hope other guys out there realize that sometimes the truth is ugly, and the only way to survive it is to face it head on. The day I decided to confront her finally arrived. I was nervous but also oddly calm, like I'd reached a point where I couldn't stay in limbo anymore. I knew she'd try her usual bullshit, lie her way out, or act like she was the victim. But I had enough evidence and enough emotional armor to face her head on. When she walked in that evening, I could see her bitchy smirk again, like she thought she was invincible. I didn't waste time. I laid out all the photos, the messages, the recordings I'd made. I told her exactly how long I'd known, how deep it went, and that I was done pretending. Her face twisted with contempt, and she started spouting her usual lies. It was just sex, it didn't mean anything, or you're just insecure, or you're overreacting. I cut her off immediately. You don't get to lie anymore, Emily. I know everything about the affair, about the secret apartment, about your lies during my grandmother's funeral. I've heard enough bullshit to last a lifetime. Her eyes flashed with anger, but I was prepared. I kept my voice steady, even though inside I felt like I was burning. She tried to turn it around on me, playing the victim. You're crazy, Jake. You're making this all up. You're insecure. I don't know why you're doing this. But I wasn't falling for it. I told her she had to leave, that she was done in my life. I wanted her gone, out of my house, out of my mind. She screamed, told me I was overreacting, said I was just jealous because she wouldn't sleep with my brother anymore. That was the moment I snapped. I told her she was a lying, manipulative bitch who had no regard for my feelings or the family she'd betrayed. I told her I never wanted to see her again and that I was filing for divorce. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused, even if just a little. I knew she'd try to spin it, try to make herself look innocent. But I was done listening. She stormed out, cursing, throwing her stuff into bags, still denying everything. I watched her go, feeling a mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd finally faced the truth, and it was brutal. But I knew I had to keep going, to rebuild my life without the lies and betrayal. I also knew I had to be prepared for her revenge. She was the kind to lash out when cornered, and I wasn't naive about her bitchy, manipulative ways. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet house. The silence was deafening. I kept thinking about everything. Her lies, my brother's betrayal, the days I'd wasted believing in the perfect life I'd thought I had. I realized that trusting blindly had only made me more vulnerable. That lesson was harsh but necessary. I'd been naive, but not anymore. I also thought about what to do next. I decided I'd hire a lawyer, start the divorce process, and cut all ties. I was determined to move on, even if it hurt like hell. I knew I'd need therapy, time, and a lot of patience. But I also knew I'd come out stronger on the other side. Most of all, I learned a brutal truth. Some people are so selfish, so manipulative that they're willing to destroy everything, family, trust, love, just for a quick fuck or to feel alive. And the worst part is, in the end, I was the one left picking up the pieces. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I don't need a liar or a cheater to define me. Now I'm in the process of healing, trying to piece my life back together. It's not easy, and sometimes I still get angry or sad. But I refuse to let them win. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows that even in betrayal, there's a way forward. It might hurt like hell, but in the end, you just have to keep fighting for yourself. Because nobody deserves to be lied to and used, least of all by someone they trusted with their life. It's been a few months now since I kicked Emily out and finalized the divorce. Honestly, at first, I thought I'd be completely shattered, that I'd never recover from the betrayal. But surprisingly, I've begun to find a sense of clarity and even a little peace. That dark cloud of shock and rage has started to lift, replaced with a stronger, more cautious version of myself. I've learned some tough lessons, mainly that trust is fragile and that some people will do anything to satisfy their own selfish needs, even if it destroys everything around them. Looking back, I realize I wasted too much time trying to see the best in her, trying to justify her actions, pretending everything was normal. But the truth is, I was blinded by love, by hope, by the idea that my family was pure and good. And I was naive enough to think that my brother and wife's relationship was something innocent. Turns out, it was a dark, calculated lie that I was too blind to see. I won't lie, the pain still lingers. Sometimes I wake up and everything floods back. The betrayal, the lies, the funeral day that I thought was my last goodbye to someone I loved. But I refuse to let it define me. I've started therapy, learned to talk about my feelings instead of bottling everything up, and begun surrounding myself with friends who genuinely care. Slowly but surely, I'm rebuilding my life. One thing I've realized is that revenge, while tempting, didn't really bring me the closure I thought it would. Confronting Emily and exposing her was necessary, but I've learned that holding onto hatred only eats you from the inside out. What really helped was forgiving myself for trusting so easily, forgiving her for her lies, and most importantly, forgiving my brother for turning into someone I no longer recognize. Now, I focus on the future. I've started dating again, cautiously, testing the waters of what it means to trust someone new. I still carry scars, but I refuse to let them turn into wounds that define me forever. I've learned that betrayal is a reflection of the betrayer, not of yourself. And that, in the end, the only thing that matters is how you pick yourself up after falling. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I'll say this: don't stay stuck in the pain. Yes, betrayal hurts like hell, and yes, it shatters your sense of security. But you're stronger than you think. Take your time to heal, lean on those who truly care, and don't be afraid to walk away from what no longer serves you. Trust is earned, not blindly given. And if someone proves they're not worth it, whether it's a partner, a sibling, or anyone else, you're better off without them. I've learned that life moves on, even after the darkest betrayals. It's not about forgetting what happened, but about growing from it, standing taller, wiser, and more aware. I won't let their lies define my story. Instead, I'll tell myself that I survived, I learned, and I'm moving forward. Because at the end of the day, no matter how dark the betrayal, there's always a way back into the light.